2020. I am Bridget Eileen. Our technical host for the hour today is Christina Liu. Thank you, Christina. And our organizers for this year's Boston Poetry Marathon online for 2020 are Christina Liu, Xtina Strong, Suzanne Mercury, who'll be reading at the end of this hour, and myself. Thank you thank you to all my fellow co-organizers, and thank you also to our volunteers for the weekend, Tom Daly, Tim Gager, Gilmore Tammany, Joe Elliot, who's also in this room, Douglas Rothschild, and especially to Chad Parento, who helped as a special assistant to Carol Weston, as well as tech host. We are streaming live to our Facebook page at Boston Poetry Marathon, our Twitter via Periscope at Boss Poetry Mara, and live on our YouTube channel. For links to these broadcasts, go to bostonpoetrymarathon.wordpress.com/watch. This year's Boston Poetry Marathon is a fundraiser for local organizations that work for racial justice in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Donations will go to Sister Fire Rhode Island and the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts. Admission to the Boston Poetry Marathon is free, but a $10 or more donation to our fundraiser is recommended and appreciated. Go to bostonpoetrymarathon.wordpress.com/donate for more information. And you can also find this information at the pinned posts or the bios of our social media for these links as well. We are doing really well on the fundraiser, and we are hoping we've smashed through our goal, and we're hoping actually that we can try and double our goal, because these are really worthy organizations, and it would be just quite something if we could, quite an accomplishment if we could say how much we've done. Yeah. Though we can't be together in person for these readings and the breaks in between, we encourage all our participants and viewers to share selfies, screenshots, old photos, memories, and comments on our social media. Please use hashtag Boston Poetry Marathon. Tag us at Boston Poetry Marathon on Instagram and Facebook, and at Boston Poetry Mara on Twitter. A reminder to our readers, hello readers, that you only have 5 minutes each, and the 5 minutes starts as soon as you begin speaking. So any intros to poems or anything like that is part of your 5-minute reading. I'll be timing the readings. Readers, please make sure your chat window is open right now. And when you have 1 minute left, I will write 1 minute in the chat. And when you have 30 seconds left, I'll write 30 seconds in the chat. At 5 minutes, I'll have to interrupt you, and introduce the next reader. If you finish before the 5 minutes, I'll thank you, and then we'll introduce the next reader. Readers, if your connection is bad during your reading, I'll interrupt you to let you know. Please follow the steps in the email we sent you about fixing bad connections. We'll move on to the next reader. And, sorry, I lost my place, but anyway, stuff. Oh, here we go. Judson Evans. Please make sure that your camera is directed to your face, especially your mouth. And please make sure that you are well lit. I'm going to introduce the readers of the hour right now. Reader, when I say your name, please give a short greeting so that we can have a sound check. Michael Peters.
Hello.
Joe Elliot.
Hi.
Lauren Russell.
Hi.
Brendan Lorber.
Hello, everyone.
Judson Evans.
Hi.
Marci, Mehta, Lucia.
Hello.
And Suzanne Mercury.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you so much. Okay, that sounds great. All right, we're about to officially start the reading, so if we could please have everyone in the room except our first reader now mute themselves. And tech host, please switch to speaker view and let us know when that's all set.
We're all set.
All right, our first reader of the hour is Michael Peters.
Good evening. I'm on a landing in my house in a dreamy cloudscape, dreamy because you're not supposed to be here. There's a railing over there. I had an accident, maybe an operation. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm not sure if it was to remove something or to insert something. And then yesterday, something made me pull this Peter Lamborn Wilson book off the shelf, and this underlined passage appeared to me, which is a great way to introduce the one poem I'm going to read. But now the cyber capitalists say that history has indeed come to an end. Presumably, we are all awake now, and like characters in some bad surrealist novel, we wake from horror into a world of pure daylight, only to find ourselves trapped in yet another realm of nightmare. Who would have expected that the end of history has jackboots of its own? Standing on a balcony above the great city's wine caves with you and Mayakovsky's translator, prophetic revelations of capital as a dream essential to the rise of science. In the divine pagoda, I had a dream that I put into a poem that our thoughts and the ways of knowing could be translated and liberated in the divine pagoda, wherein holy men grabbed deserving leaders by the neck and strangle them in their sleep with a song. The words of the song don't matter. Their eyes pop open and we see the dilemma. The magical farce obscures the hylopathy. Oh, resurrection nostalgia on the night before Easter. We try deep breathing and lift our hit points up to the sky, taking simple socialist ideas as a refuge for our noble minds. The translator tells us to put a mark on the doorway of our skulls. Just a mark, he says, in red paint, babbling about something about plagues, lambs, and sacrifice. We walk out onto a balcony above the great city's wine caves. We shout from some cavern deep in our diseased lungs. Down with corporate fascism! People, not the economy! Long live the prophets who dared to lift the veil of hegemony! The air is mild and damp, and there's a sudden bump in the leader's approval rating. We know there's more starlight in the sky than city lights, but the quarantine is still in full effect, and the city is something like a horizontal Christmas tree. The darkness is weird because it's not dark. You can't even see the stars, and yet the twinkling passenger ship seems to be sinking into the earth. We shout more slogans, but the translator can't keep up. Down in the street, passersby violate the curfew without masks. Then one end of the city rises up to reveal its deformed concrete head. A parade of chocolate bunnies begins to wander down the concrete net that is the street. 14 chocolate versions of the Stations of the Cross rumble by on flatbed trucks. Finally, the promised ventilators and hospital beds and crates of medical masks on elephant and donkey back. Confetti falls, rolls of TP flutter in the corridors of the streets through a ticker tape on a dais pulled by lab technicians. In a nest of green plastic grass, we see the first vial of the new vaccine, seated on a dark chocolate throne of gilded tin foil. The air smells sweet from all the chocolate. I didn't think we could pull this off, I think. I feel dizzy. I look at you looking at me, TM. Your eyes, they're wide. I look at the translator, avoiding my eyes. I look down at the concrete floor of the balcony. Those drops. I put my hand to my face. I realize my head is bleeding. I lean on the railing to steady myself. I look over the railing to the open door way below. Oh, martyrs of the future, unbridled poetic genius. Write your poems in your own fucking blood. I look up at you now and wonder and think, fuck this. I'm not going to die enthusiastically. I think I'm going to die fully conscious, knowing the whole world was a goddamn corporation, knowing everything was a farcical commodity. This is how the dream will end.
Thanks, Michael. That was great. Our next reader is Joe Elliott.
Hi, everyone. I got a few poems. Unlike novels, which draw the reader in for hours, making them believe in the permanence of the world of the characters, poems do not pretend. Like people, as soon as they've begun, they end. Chains. The new bacteria who likes to swim in the ocean and break down and process, eat, and digest the old plastic. The new plankton who like to float in one vast pale cloud in the top 2 feet of sea drift and feed on the new bacteria. The new fish who like to arrive in gorgeously involuting and synchronized schools and gorge themselves on the new plankton. The new human who knows their shit, who owns their shit, who won't send their shit anywhere but keeps it close by their side to snack on like popcorn during the long, long lack of falling apart. The new human who lives on the new fish. TV is the thief of imagery. This is a line I got from Dave Johnson. I was writing 10-10-10 poems from Poet's House because I'm just a poet whore and I'll just take any prompt and write a poem every day. So that's what I was doing. Not really, you know. Anyways, this is the poem for this phrase he used when he was talking about the prompt. The old dog curled up on the couch has reappeared on the couch in the living room of a sitcom I am watching. I watch a woman who might be my wife pausing over a sink full of dishes, glance out the window at the dogwood in the backyard blossoming on channel 13. The channel's current is sweeping what could be my kitchen, table and chairs, bed and bureau, doors and floors, walls and roof, away and reassembling them at brand new home on the sidewalk, outside of which children vaguely resembling my own 15 years ago blithely play hopscotch under a sky which is always, episode after episode, sunny. Even the distinct sound of someone rummaging through the recycling for beer cans and bottles in front of my by now empty lot has become a sound effect on a rerun at which I, up late, am staring, and by which I, a little confused, am aroused from that old plump armchair which is also gone, since someone must, in the absence of the barking dog, go see what's going on out front. And it might as well be me, but there's no one there, of course, no homeless man hunched over and carefully attending to the heap of bad garbage by the curb. All the homeless, talking heads reassure me, have moved on, have been ferried in Amazon Prime shopping carts to the edge of a vast production lot somewhere very remote, somewhere very west, somewhere in the clouds, where they wait to be turned into bites, which we, the new homeless, absently eat. Okay, I'm gonna read. Two more poems. This one's called Translation from Emoji-ish, which I give the kids a set of emoji and I ask them to translate it. And I tell them I don't know how to do it. So I did it too. The year the tree was green for a day and then summer was over finally arrived. And the expressions of surprise on the faces of people all over the globe were a little hypocritical, as this sudden end had been approaching for quite some time. And when, right before their eyes, the leaves withered and dropped to the ground, when the crown fell from the king's head and landed in a puddle, for there was still rain and puddles after the rain in those days, the crowd grew strangely cheerful and cheered and called for his head. They were clearly avoiding individual and personal responsibility in the matter. The year summer lasted a day. Many at first thought it was the sun, not themselves, they couldn't trust. And so some began to gather under the empty tree at night to worship the moon, the gently smiling moon, who would not burn their skin, nor dry their wells, nor scorch their fields, they thought. Yes, they'd implore the lovely silver goddess with outstretched arms to catch those additional little puffs of carbon their manufactured faces emitted with every convulsively heartfelt and fake sob. And as the blame began to slip and slide around like an ice cube on a hot griddle, sending up its urgent fumes, many ceased altogether to think in words and instead began to hop from one image to the next the way a child might cross a stream, for there were still streams to cross and woods to run away to in those days, drifting further and further from home. And that is all I have time for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you again for tech hosting earlier today. Very much appreciated to give us all little breaks here and there that we need. Next up, back in the poetry marathon lineup after hiatus is Lauren Russell. Yay!
Hi, thank you so much. It's so exciting to be back by virtual means. And thanks to all the organizers, Christina, Xtina, Suzanne, Bridget, and to all the volunteers. This is an incredible thing to pull off. I'm just going to read 3 poems from my new book, Descent. The background is several years ago, I acquired a copy of my great-great-grandfather's diary. His name was Bob. He was a captain in Hood's Texas Brigade in the Civil War. And after the end of the war, went back to East Texas and had children by 3 of his former slaves who were also sisters. And one of them was my great-great-grandmother, Peggy. Dear Robert, dear Redbeard, dear specter of the great white father, dear slaveholder, dear Confederate captain captured at Gettysburg, dear dispenser of land, favors, seamen, procreator of 20 children by 3 sisters simultaneously, dear father of the Negro League pitcher, dear farmer, schoolmaster, landlord, hired hand, grave paler, log roller, surveyor, and manure shoveler, dear churchman and circus fan, dear reveler at brigade reunions, dear collector of sentimental poems about loneliness and redemption, dear pointy-eared like Lucifer and bearded beyond Rasputin, dear mythical Jim Crow defier, hero of my grandfather's childhood, who took him on the whites-only section of this streetcar. He claimed this really happened, proclaiming, "These are my grandchildren and they're sitting with me." Dear diarist, dear widower, dear lonesome hunger, dear admirer of well-formed women, dear inscrutable in the tintype beside your favorite half-claimed child, dear tallier of payments, debts, work days, weather conditions, neighbors by name and race, dear borer of wells, dear master of omission. Heard a whippoorwill holler this morning for the first time this spring. Heard a whippoorwill holler, all hands choking cotton. Heard a holler, a whimper. Heard a will whip her. Will heard a whip. Whip or will heard, herding hers, whipping herds, sowing oats, whipping horse, stripping cane ore. Whelped her, willed her a well and a hold, dank of the dark of the hell of the hold, choking cotton, caught in, a yoke and a pole, stripped and caned for. Heard her holler, caught her, held her hand to the whipped out your, held her head to the whipped out the billfold. Heard a whimper this spring, choked or, heard a holler, a hollowed out hold, whipped to a wheelbarrow, hell bent toward a hole, ripped from a, wrapped in a gut wrench sugar hold. Question. So how did the women feel about this? Answer. Don't guess they had no say. Peggy rises out of sleep through the dream called blue, where all her kinfolks are wading through fields of blue. Even her father left in Georgia, her stillborn brother somehow grown, her niece who stumbled into the fire on Christmas Day and died with the vision of her white dress aflame, the aunt or uncle who ran off and was lost forever to the auction block. They are all wearing blue, blue hats, blue shawls, and in the way they sing a song with no words deep from the gut, there is also blue. And bluely she creeps toward them in her calico blue. And now there is a dance, they are partnering for the quadrille, and the man they called Bo Peep cradles a banjo, strikes a tune blue. And her petticoats starched with hominy water and Pris's too. And every time they stop moving for a second, the petticoats pop and Pris giggles, and in Pris's eyes are flecks of blue. The log train shakes her into waking, black then dark blue. And she reaches for her kerchief blue, and she is stumbling toward the cradle blue and cooing shoo shoo to the baby who is hollering now. One Sunday, the preacher prayed, Lord, let us all go to heaven where there'll be no log train. Hoo, 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 and a clankety clank, whoos, black smoke curling into the half blue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was, is that published yet? Okay, can you send me the link?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then our next reader is going to be Brendan Lorber.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much to everybody who was involved in the Herculean task of putting this event together. It's always a major undertaking, but especially so this year. So thank you, and thank you for having me. The only thing you should know is that years ago, my friend and I worked the overnight shift at some place, and one night we left a sign in the bathroom that said, "Please pardon our appearance as we kill the only thing you ever loved." And you don't have to know that for the poems I'm going to read, but I wanted to get it off my chest. Around the beginning of March, I started a sonnet sequence on my birthday. Very quickly went off the rails and stopped being about birthdays. So I'm going to read a few of these sonnets. Into the rubble, friends. I don't believe in jinxing the so far so goodness. And so what if it collapses? We have each other to blame, my having jinxed it. A nervous laugh at the initial, this is so weird phase. And then again on the other side, when the rubble cries out to the new sunken lounge we could make of it. We might be bright, burning more often than we'd like. And then what's this? It's a sonnet in that lines that say they are in the way we've made it this far through dogged adaptations to the lost and ground that shifts beneath us until it's over, and hard to remember the bygone night we found each other because we didn't know who we were, like a bookmark halfway through something I guess I never finished that turns out to be a flyer for a gig in person in a few weeks. How will I recognize you? My strong suit is made of moths, and my de-aging solution is to look old from the get-go and to wish I danced less awkwardly uncomfortable in the wreckage of my own body, but all happy in the presence of all of yours. That was 3/6. This is 3/24. Please pardon our appearance as we kill the only thing you ever loved, is what the sign used to become a portent, the way might or could transforms news into meaty hands that shove you through the unfiltered void. My void is watched over by William Carlos Williams, sometimes, who stood a moment on the doorstep of each house call mapping outcomes. But now the outcomes suggest we might want to wear extra masks over our entire head as a kind of tessellated buffer against the only uncertainty, which is how quickly we will definitely die. That guy you loved once will die, never realizing what a mistake he made. None of the mixed up people will get their extra moment, especially not the angelic who could have made a new world from whatever stale wheat thin passes for hope in your local branch of a now unreachable future. I have one good idea, but the idea is that all my ideas are bad. A kind of double negative capability, the joy of scowling at anyone without a mask, for the hit of illusory control, or of sitting at my desk with 50 unsent love poems because nobody needs that kind of unrequited super Neruda skulking around the neighborhood, or of our passwords in an envelope with the preemptive notes goodbye. But if dreams are what won't come true, maybe there's a shot at our waking life, in a world so awful even hypothetical worse ones are comforting for being conjecture, with their distance from unbearable culpability, like Dr. Williams trying to make it right with Flossie at long last, which required making it wrong in new ways, or Ezra Pound leaning on him to quit being a doctor, though being a doctor was what made him a poet, even if it didn't give him time to write. Just because you hold two contradictory thoughts doesn't mean either is the right one, only that you're trying. 327. Shame on the maniacs within myself who insist I look both ways before crossing, when the real terrors wait for us to come to them in all their patient expression of doorknobs that taught themselves how to, open doors and then how to kill. Yet soon we'd give anything to get back to this day, like it was the one we went to the Williamsburg Bridge and then just walked home and took a bath without jumping for once. Everybody's a hero. Everybody makes you cry, makes it okay, with delays on the inward ordering of essentials for their late arrival, reminds us these are still the good times, themselves half convinced that the brutal collapse of the plan was maybe not the plan all along, as it chases us with fear of droplets and then the actual droplets from our burnt out shell into something like an abandoned mansion on a hill where they say nobody's lived for years, but it's full of agitated whispers as though a surprise party were seconds away. But it's nobody's birthday. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Brendan.
Cheers.
Loved it. Up next, we have Judson Evans.
Thank you so much, organizers. And also thank you for the incredible attention and enthusiasm that just keeps the energy going. You're the ideal utopian readers and audiences all poets want. I'm going to read two poems. The first of them is the beginning of a long project that's a kind of soundtrack to a video that was made by these two Swiss artists, Peter Fischel and David Weiss. It's a kind of Rube Goldberg device. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's played at museums. It's a kind of domino effect of crazy things knocking each other down. I'm going to read you the opening of this because it's a kind of creation story. The way things go. In the beginning was the bag, no string, no cord, heavy duty leaf and lawn, rubbish and star. In the beginning. Jiu-jitsu, lo-fi, no wave, fingerprintless stasis. I don't believe in beginning or end, in gods except domestic ones, only matter and swerve, matter and swerve. The beginning, coal tar disco ball, radiation of the egg sac, pinata palindrome, words restless in oxbow breathing, perforated tongue. I don't believe in ends or beginnings, in gods or orders larger than my own 10 fingers. The unpronounced once, the unuttered utter, the back stutter sun's unfeathered influx. Only matter and swerve begets matter and swerve. In the beginning, triple ply jumbo, black sack, black box, no tear, no tears, no labor lost, no lost leader, no hands, no handles, the touchless TV, the stropless razor, the strifeless girder, the topless nurture. I don't believe in beginnings or ends, only matter and swerve. This poem is dedicated to my husband. It's called Hysteron Proteron, which is a figure of speech that reverses two actions, putting the later action before the first. So it's like put on your shoes and socks, which is physically impossible, or putting the cart before the horse. Hysteron Proteron. Whisper out candles before the blown wishes. Shattered glass sweeps back to the hand, the toast. Tell stories back assward. Shit job at the paper mill. Dream sludge, drudge circle. Summer job at Charmin toilet paper. Core strata of back spun weeks. What counterweight, opposable thumbprint would have to happen before I met you. Cadenza bleed through overture. Jobs and jobs of eliminating, elucidating unskilled starter selves, disarming motions to the wrong inflection points, cleaning floors, scanning microfiche, mistaking the copier for shredder, green glow of Xerox, Clorox, X-ray specs. Was I going or coming under the tree fall no one hears, the forest of tree fall? Your several addresses, back of envelope commutations, all the ways of missing you, called years, copulas and confetti, thick time, downpour of days, computer cable channel changer. There would be death and travel. I would have to quit and start 5 a.m. or p.m., locked in the swing shift's glass cubicle of either or until I leaped out of one aperture, twisted the mechanical arm of another, seesaw season, deep entanglement of semen and sweat are scattered particles anywhere, anthill sand carried back to the compass points. Perpetual motion machine, ever out of never. Teach me the language where the future is behind and past before us, being written into extinction by the fist of friction. Afternoon bedroom overflowing with stairs, count back to thunder, shut all the windows to keep the storm in. Thank you.
Oh, perfect timing. Thank you so much, Judson. Our next reader is Marci, Mehta, Lucia.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to read. Probably be the only one this hour reading someone else's poem, but I wanted to provide a context. My father-in-law was very sick for a long time, 6 years, with a condition called PSP, which eventually left him completely immobilized. At the same time, his brain, unlike so many illnesses that are chronic and lead to death, was active. So he was in a wheelchair, couldn't talk. His eyes had issues, so he couldn't read, he couldn't watch TV. He couldn't do much of anything except listen. And what he began listening to for the first time in his life was poetry. So for the last couple of years of his life, he learned to listen to poetry and take meaning from it. And that made the last section of his life meaningful. So I wanted to share one of his favorite authors, in part because those of us who love poetry and certainly who write it may sometimes feel like it doesn't always have that power. But to see my father-in-law discover it and discover how to die within it was really powerful for me. He was an Indian immigrant, and this is a South Asian poet, Agha Shahid Ali, who carried his mother's body back to Kashmir. Just as my husband, who is the son of an Indian immigrant, my father-in-law, took his father's ashes back to India. So as you listen, I hope you can try to think about my father-in-law listening to this, one of his favorite poets, and what he might have found in it as he learned to listen. It's Srinagar Airport. There is no God but God, from the Quran. Only clouds. The rain has just stopped. And as her shrine is listed onto Srinagar's tarmac lowered, listen, even they are here speechless, weeping, those who of passion never made a holocaust. One by one, they hold me in their arms. How could this have happened? Baya, how could it? To the waiting van she's brought on their shoulders. Who are all these strangers for whom she rivals God today? They stare as we speed through streets that follow. Farewell, farewell. And then at each turn go into hiding. For each turn's a world that recalls her. Every turn her world, unable to say goodbye. Though she, from every corner, is waving with such pity, we melt, melt. Past the world she loved, past each corner she is waving from, just waving herself goodbye. Who doesn't owe her tears when we reach home and her house? It is her house, echoes with her keys. The doors open, she is everywhere. Yes, here it must start, the farewell. From this very room, from its quiet center. Outside, a man says, soon it will be dark. We must reach the graveyard. From the garden, echo to echo, voices rise. We must. The afternoon darkens. She is further than any God today, and nearer than any God, and God. He's Father, Father from us, forever, far. We lift the shrine, the women break into, there is no God but.
Thank you so much, Marci. It's really going to give me a lot to think about. And I love that poet who my teacher and earlier performer, Kazim Ali, had introduced to me. So we are now at our last reader of the hour. I think I kind of know her.
Do you now?
My artistic co-director of the Boston Poetry Marathon, Lauren Bacall, aka Suzanne Mercury.
Oh, God, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being here. I love you all. This is a labor of love this year, and I'm just elated with how well this event has happened online. And it's just great to see everyone. I'm going to read two poems. In this past year, I've been learning a lot about beekeeping and how to keep bees. And I don't have my own hive yet, but eventually that's going to happen. And I've been writing a lot of poems about bees. So I wrote these two. The first poem is called Thin Layer of Light. At night, the queen sleeps in a thin layer of light, wings building upon the older and other layers of light, red now and reflected in glossy propolis, radiant in the darkness, thorax gold black, banded and heavy, she. As the worker bees tend to the queen cups and the larvae curl at the bottom of each. It is swarming season, and the larvae form themselves into questions. Shaped as an ear, they hear in rows of slow history, wax sealed and repeating their secrets. What you remember now becomes yourself, so they say. And what is my equivalence to this? Perhaps it is only to walk on foot as far as possible and to keep walking until my body can't take anymore. Walk the desecrated earth, still wet with silver. Follow the patina, pollen gathering on my feet, smearingly in the sun. And the second poem The title I took from a line from Paul Celan. The world is gone, I must carry you. And I wrote this in March after, lockdown started. Excuse me. The world is gone, I must carry you. I look through parted fingers to balance the sun's quintessence in the bee's embodied flight. Today, a dozen or so bumblebees prowl the early spring rain. Wind-sweeping mini hurricanes weighted down by the water, burrowed in the early bloodroot and twin leaf. The rain rings gray in near black pools, and my neighbors, all inside, curtains drawn. I will wear my mask anyway, you never know. Curtains drawn, second nature. Now that I think of it, I think this is why I like being out in the rain. I want to be in it, surrounded in the curtain of rain. And I am, but the world is so far off. Maybe these rain bedazzled bees have decided the earth belongs to them again. Maybe this is how their earth reclaims. They're startlingly tame, more so than I would ever be under the circumstances. Last year, one slept on my braid while I worked in the garden. And this one here cupped gold in my palm. Its body should be too heavy to fly, so they say. Wings too small, and yet it does. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, great. Okay, Christina, can we go back to grid view now, please? As we say goodbye to our readers of the hour, thank you all so very much. Michael Peters, Joe Elliot, Lauren Russell, Brendan Lorber, Judson Evans, Marci, Mehta, Lucia, and Suzanne Mercury. Next up in our final hour of the Boston Poetry Marathon is Marcella Durand, Jose Reyes, Donald Vincent, Jack Kimball, Kristen Garth, Jenny Grassel, Gilmore Tamney, and then we will be at the finish line and say goodbye to you all. Please do not forget to donate. BostonPoetryMarathon.wordpress.com/donate. We smashed through our goal. We set a new one. We're setting it to 2,000. So we're 365 away from that. Let's get to it. We're going to keep this link up for a while after. So if you don't get to it today, we'll be promoting it as we retweet things and
Wrap things up. That's beautiful.
yeah. So all right, we can